Hello, I'm Anna, the Yarn Randomizer, and this is a recording. This is a video on how to do spreadsheets for knitting. And we're going to start really basic. And this is my first time using this approach to recording videos, so please have a little patience with me. I did want to, capture video as well as capturing the screen at the same time, so we'll see how this goes. All right, so if you look on the screen right now, you'll notice I have Ravelry up here, and I have on my right, I have my my Google Drive. Now, if you don't have a Google Drive, you can get a Google account for free, like a Gmail account, and with that comes a Google Drive and everything else. Or if you have Microsoft products like Excel, some spreadsheet program, but I'm going to show how to use it on something that comes for free. So this is Google Drive here, and so we'll start with a free pattern on Ravelry. So one of the things I wanted to look up was if I look at patterns, and I want to look at free patterns. Let's see. It says knitting, and we want it to be free. And let's have it be the most projects made. And so you'll notice as we scroll down, we see some sweaters, hats, and stuff. But here it is. What I want to focus on today is Grandmother's Favorite, the Original by Vintage. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this pattern to come up with a spreadsheet. So it says here this pattern is available for free, so we'll click that link, and that takes you to a web archive page that has the pattern. Now let me see if I can increase the presentation here. It's a little small, so let's bring this up a little bit and scroll up. Okay, so here is the basic pattern, and now we got the pattern on one side. Let's get the spreadsheet set up on the other. So I'm going to do new, and I'm going to ask for a new Google Sheet. And so this brings up a spreadsheet. I'm going to change the name to Grandmother's, I'm not going to put the apostrophe, favorites, like that. And you see how this came up with this showing tables. I'm just going to close that. I'm not interested in that. And so now what we want to start doing is starting to look and see what's in the pattern and how to include it in the spreadsheet. So first set of instructions are to cast on 4 stitches. So I'm going to mark this as the cast on, and I'm going to put 4 stitches there. Now to move from cell to cell, you can tab to move across, or enter. Sometimes enter will move you down depending on how it behaves, but worst comes to worst, you just click on there and type what you want to put in there. I leave this first row empty so I can make headings. So here I'm going to write number of stitches here. So we got a cast on, and we cast on 4 stitches. Now if we look next, row 1, I'm going to write row 1, and then I'm going to put, it says knit 4, so I'm just going to do 4 stitches there. And now for row 2, it says knit 2, yarn over, knit across the row. So what's going to happen when I read that, so no matter what's going on in the row, it's going to be the same number of stitches it had before plus 1. Now, here's the trick in spreadsheets here. Instead of typing 5 here and having to type the number for every row, I can sit there and say, well, this, I'll refocus on, when I click on this cell, I'm going to hit the equal sign, and that's going to be the start of a formula. And the first thing I want in my formula was the number of stitches from the previous row, and then I want to add 1 stitch. Once you've got that typed in there, you hit enter, and there you go, it's 5 stitches. Now, here's where the nice thing comes. So we're going to repeat row 2 until we have 44 stitches on the needle. So I'm going to do a bunch of these row 2s. So some people might call it, the numbered rows. I'm just going to call these all row 2 since we're doing the same thing. And I'm going to copy that down for a little ways. And let me again show how I did that. So I clicked on this cell that has row 2 in it. I hit Control C to copy it, and then I picked a whole bunch. I mouse down and drag down for a whole bunch of these cells, and I hit Control V. And that puts the same text in every box. Now for the number of stitches that's in each of these repeats of row 2, we want it to do the same thing it did on the previous row. And the nice thing with the spreadsheet is you have this ability to take a formula you've already created. Notice I click on this and I can see up here what the formula is. It's that cell B3, here, the cell above it, plus 1. I want it to do the same thing all the way down. Now the nice thing is you see this little dark circle in the corner here. If I left click on that, get my mouse over it there like that, and I drag it down like this and let go, it moves that formula down into each one, but it changes it so it still is the same formula. It's using the number of stitches from the row above and then adding 1 stitch. So instead of just always adding to that 4, it adds whatever it was from the previous row plus 1. And if I click down here, you can see that the location of where it's pulling the value of the previous row is the one right above it. It did all that automatically. And we're going to see how to make it not do that a little bit later. So this gets me up to 27 stitches right now. So we need a little more. So I'm going to copy some more of these and Control V paste it again. And let's drag down that formula a little more. And see where that gets. Oh, 42 stitches. So we only need 2 more rows. So we're going to do that. I'm going to label 2 more as row 2s, and then I'm going to copy that formula down 2 more times. Okay, so that gets us to 44 stitches. Now once you get to 44 stitches, now we start doing row 3. And row 3 is knit 1, knit 2 together, yarn over, knit 2 together, and then knit to the end. So if we're getting rid of 1 stitch, 2 stitches, and adding back in 1, that means when you're done with this row, it'll be 1 stitch less than the previous row. So that's what I'm going to do. So for row 3, I'm going to hit the equal sign to start a formula, equal. And see, it's trying to guess what I want to do, but I'm going to skip that. Let's put that away. It's going to equal the previous row minus 1. Okay, and now that I've got that right, I hit enter, and you can see it brought the number down, 44 to 43, and it says here, repeat row 3 until you have 4 stitches on the needle. So now, I'm going to copy this row 3, Control C, come down, and I have to apologize for the text coming in on my phone. All right. And again, we have this new formula where we're taking away 1 stitch per row, and we're going to come here and kind of pull that down with the left mouse button all the way down to 17 stitches. So we've gotten the reductions to happen. We're going to copy and do a handful more, and now we're going to drag this formula down through here. Oh, look, I went too far. So I really only wanted to do this down to 4. So what I'm going to do is highlight these extra rows and just hit the delete key, and that'll get rid of the extras. So now when we finish this row 3, we're down to 4 stitches. So we're down to 4 stitches on the needle. It says now you can either bind off or do a round of single crochet to make a little loop. So let's just assume we're going to bind off. So now I'm going to call this bind off, and it will be working 4 stitches to do this bind off, so I'm just going to put that 4 stitches there. So now that's the entire pattern row for row if you execute it exactly the way it is here. And the next thing I want to do is figure out at any point in here how many stitches have I done total. So I am going to say cumulative. So what's the total number of stitches I've done? So now, at first, the total number of stitches is just equal to the number of stitches from that first row. So I'm going to put that there. And again, it wants to make suggestions. I don't want that. Sometimes it works in everything, but not in this case. Okay. So now that first row, it's 4 stitches, but now, and when we do row 2, it'll be equal to the number of stitches you can see it's guessing this one. It's equal to the number of stitches we did in the previous row plus the number of stitches we just did on this row. And so that works. An 8 total, after you do that cast on in your first row, you've done a total of 8 stitches. Now, what we're going to do is drag this formula all the way down. So again, you just get to this where it's got this outline, you click on it, it has the outline, and then you left click on that dot and drag it down, and we can keep dragging down until we get all the way to the bottom of the list of stitches. Look at that. So now we have the total number of stitches in this entire project is 1,932. So now that we know that, one of the things it will be useful to know is to put in here what is our percent complete. I always like to have that. Now for this simple pattern, it's pretty obvious. When you get to that halfway, the biggest size, 44 stitches across, you're pretty much halfway. Then you're working the rest of the way. But this, you'll know how to do it for projects that aren't like this. And you can see it here. And also if you decided to do stripes or that kind of thing, you could figure out kind of how much yarn you need, how much you're going to, how to divide it up and that kind of stuff. There's lots of ways you can play around with this. But right now, we're just going to get the percent complete. So to know how complete we are, we need to take that total number of stitches down here, and we're going to use that to give us a percentage. So to know percent complete, again, we're going to make a formula. It's going to equal the total number of stitches done divided by, now we got to scroll down. We want this value here. So this total number divided by this. Now I'm going to hit enter, and we come up here, and it's a really messy decimal number. For this whole column, I'm going to click on the D here so that I highlight the whole column, and you'll notice up here there's a percent symbol, so I want this to look like a percent, and now that tidies things up a little bit. So now the trick is, can you do the same thing as you did before, just drag down this formula? Well, it's a little odd, so watch what happens when I drag it down. I get a divide by 0 error. Why is that? So now what happens is, in the original formula, that C84 is where the total was, but when you move the formula down a row, it moved down to C85, which is an empty cell. So how do you keep that from happening? Well, what you do is we'll get rid of this bad one, and we'll go back into this formula for the first percentage. I'm going to come up here where it shows the formula. So that C2, the amount of the cumulative stitches, we want that to always stay to adjust as we go copy the formula down. It should always be about the one that's right next to it. But we want the total number of stitches to use the same cell, the same value all the time. So the trick to doing that in these spreadsheets is I go in here and I'm going to put a $sign in front of the C, that is, don't change the column, and I'm going to put a $sign in front of the row number, which means don't change the column to the row. So by putting a little $sign in front of each of those, that's going to make it, and again, it's doing, I'm not going to do this autofill. That's going to make it so that it leaves it. So now see what happens when we copy this down one row now. It worked. And if you look, you see that that C84 changes the same, but it did the division against the same row total of stitches. So now we can copy this down, all the way down, scroll down. And we'll let it go, and 100%, which is exactly what we should expect in that very last cell. So this is the most basic execution of making one of these spreadsheets. You could do this type for a scarf, and you could do it for a shawl too, and that kind of thing. Either shawls, any way a shawl's knitted, you should be able to kind of include it into this kind of setup. And the nice thing is you'll be able to, like if the shawl continues to get bigger, you'll be able to see where that 50% point is in using your yarn to be able to tell. So for example, here, if I was knitting, I had some yarn that I was using in one color with this spreadsheet, and when I got down to here where it says here's 48 and here's 51%, if I got down to that 51%, but I had less than half my yarn left, let's say, maybe I'd used 60% of the yarn. Let's say it's a 100-gram ball and I'd already used 60 grams by this point. I would know that I wouldn't, if I only had 40 grams left, I wouldn't be able to finish this project here. There's other complexities about types of stitches and that kind of stuff that get into this, but at a very basic level, this gives you a rough guide as to whether you have enough yarn to finish. What I want to see when I'm working on something where I'm just using a single color yarn and I have this percentage is I want to see the amount of the percent of the yarn I have left to be a little higher than the percentage of the project left, to be bigger, more yarn left than the percentage left to complete for the project. So it's really useful for that. I have to remember to silence my phone for the next time for this. But it's really useful for that. And so I would say, take a pattern like this, something similar, give it a try. If you have any questions, let me know. There's lots of help documents about how to use Google Sheets out there. That'll be very useful, but this is the most basic. Like this gives you everything you need for kind of a very basic start. Now, next time we'll try something more complicated. I'll pick a free shawl and we'll see what that goes like with the next project. So I hope everybody's doing well. I hope you're receiving kindness and giving kindness in your life, and that you're taking care of yourself. And in the meantime, enjoy your knits. Let's see if we figure out how to pause this. Okay, bye-bye.